Unit 6 is all about communicating through motion. Up until this point in the class, everything we've done has been still. Nothing has moved. And now we're going to take what we've learned and we're going to start to make things come to life. And so in Unit 6, we start with animation, because animation truly is taking still objects and giving them life through motion. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, why not teach us After Effects? Why not use an animation software? Are we really going to use Photoshop to animate? And the answer is yes. We're actually going to use Photoshop to do video editing in the last unit as well. The reason being is, one, no one has time to learn brand new programs this late in the semester. We know Photoshop well at this point, so why not just tap into what it can do even further? And two, if you guys aren't moving on to a video class, you're not going to be able to learn Adobe Premiere Pro. If you're not going to take an animation class, you're not going to be able to learn After Effects. And so taking Photoshop and diving into the depths of what it can do is going to empower you guys to say that you know Photoshop through and through, which again is a hireable skill. So let's start with animation. Animation is a very broad word. It can be two-dimensional animation, 2D animation, like hand-drawn cartoons. It can be 3D animation, like a lot of what our movies are. It could be stop-motion animation. It could be like one of those Post-it note flip books that we all probably drew in grade school. Animation is all-encompassing when things are created by hand for movement. And so there's a story that I'd like to start with. In the late 1870s, a man named Edward Muybridge, he was a photographer at that time. He loved to study the art of motion and movement, and he would occasionally and frequently do studies of human and animal movement by photographing people coming downstairs or animals moving in different ways. He was fascinated by stopping motion and analyzing what that motion looked like mid-frame. Now, he was hired by Leland Stanford, the governor of California at the time. Stanford College is his namesake, and Stanford was a betting man and would often go to the horse races. In fact, he owned a horse that was at the races. And Stanford found himself in a bet that at any point during a horse's gallop, its feet, all four of its feet, are off the ground. Stanford then hired Muybridge to figure this out. Was it true? Now, some of us are like, well, that wouldn't be very hard. You increase the shutter speed a whole lot and you stop the action. But keep in mind, this is the late 1870s. Photography was a really new medium, and at best, it took several minutes to expose an image, let alone a fraction of a second. And so Muybridge then, he got creative, and he invented this new shutter system and this new emulsified paper that could expose a lot faster than previous papers. And he set up these cameras along the horse track, set up at a tripwire. And as the horse came barreling down the thoroughway, trip, 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 these cameras snapped photos of the horse at varying points in its motion, proving, as we know, that at some point during a horse's gallop, all four of its feet are off the ground. So this story is, one, kind of interesting, but two, the photographs that came out of this story became some of the first animated movement. And in fact, we get modern day movies from the result of these images. Why? Because animation is an illusion of movement. A series of frames stacked together that when played sequentially appears like movement. And so these images actually were put inside of what was called a zoetrope, and we've all probably seen it. There's a little carousel mechanism that when you'd spin it really fast, the images on the inside would look like it's moving. And these horse images, when put inside of a zoetrope and spun, all of a sudden the horse came to life. And his legs are running and moving, and people were in awe of this. And film's the same way, isn't it? Where we have frames per second, 24 or 30 frames per second. They're just photographs put in order when played back, create movement. So we're going to get started in Photoshop's animation today by talking about frame by frame animation. Photoshop does two kinds of animation. Frame by frame animation, which is more along the lines of the flipbook style animation. And then it does what's called keyframe animation, and we'll cover that in a little bit. But let's talk about frame animation and what we can do with it in Photoshop. Now, before we get started, we have to understand there is a brand new panel that we have not opened up yet. And this panel is going to give us a whole new range of features for movement in Photoshop. It's called the Timeline panel. Let's go up to Window in the menu bar, and let's come down to Timeline. The Timeline panel is relatively unassuming, but it gives us a button and a pull down right here. If you toggle down that pull down, you see we have two options here: create a video timeline or create a frame animation. And for this point right now, I want to start with a frame animation. So go ahead and click on that. And now click on the physical button that says create frame animation. Now, nothing terribly exciting happened, but what did happen was it took layer 1, which is currently blank, and it created a frame out of it. Which means we are now viewing our layer panel in time. And this is huge because this is what gives us that illusion of movement. We can have all these different layers in our layer panel and then make them move sequentially in time. Now, I've given you guys on canvas the 11 horse images from Muybridge's photographs. We're going to take those images and I'm going to show you guys how we can create a frame-by-frame animation bringing a horse from the late 1870s to life in 21st century technology. And if that's not romanticized, I don't know what is. Now go ahead and download those from Canvas, but don't open them in Photoshop. We're not going to go to File Open. That would just open 11 new tabs with a horse image on each one. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do instead is get our horses inside of our layer panel. Now to do this, we have to understand what a script is in Photoshop. Scripts are pre-existing actions that do a series of things for you. They're kind of like automations. They're really quite nice. You can develop your own scripts. I've never tried, but I have some photography friends who have created their whole process through scripts. To access our scripts, so we're going to go up to File, come down to the Scripts side menu, and we want to go to the option that says Load Files into Stack. Load files into stack. Now come to the Browse button and go ahead and open up the 11 horse images that you guys just downloaded. You'll see them loaded here in the window. And then go ahead and hit OK. Don't check anything down here. Just hit Browse, find them, and then hit OK. Now the script is going to run. And Photoshop's going to look like it's glitching and things are going to come up and disappear and your layer panel is going to freak out. That's the script running behind the scenes. It's doing a series of actions for you. Just let it run its course until all 11 horse images are seen in your layer panel. Now notice how it created a brand new artboard for us. So we're working with a new project now. And notice how our timeline panel reset. It's because, again, we're working with a brand new project. So go ahead and click on Horse 1, the very top layer in your layer panel. And then go ahead and hit Create Frame Animation in your timeline panel. We've now made our first frame in our frame-by-frame animation, but there's an issue. It's only layer 1. And that's not going to be much of a motion if we only have one frame. So what we have to do now is find a way to get the rest of our layers as frames in our timeline panel. And thankfully there's an option for this too. Come to the hamburger icon on your timeline panel. Again, that's the stacked lines in the corner of the panel. Click on them. We see a lovely option here that says Make Frames from Layers. Fancy that. Go ahead and click on that for me. And simultaneously, we should now see all 11 Muybridge horse images inside of our timeline panel. Now go ahead and hit that play button and let's watch that horse run. Albeit he's running backwards. For the life of me, I can't figure out why he runs backwards. I'll show you how to fix that in a second. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this is cool to me. It is cool that we can take images from old times and bring them to life inside of Photoshop. Like that's a really cool thing that we can do. And it's gonna loop and play forever and ever, and we have this horse running. I wanna show you guys a bit of what these terms and these buttons mean inside of our timeline panel. But this is a great example of the true depth of what animation is. At its core, it's an illusion of movement. It is still photographs played sequentially through time that creates that illusion of movement. So all this is actually doing is it is turning on and off the eyeball buttons on our layers rapidly. So it's kind of cool. It's just really working its way down the timeline panel. But we now have our layer panel seen in time. I'm going to go ahead and hit stop here. Now we have this forever pull down. Always reminds me of the Sandlot, right? Forever. If you toggle that down, you can see that we have different looping options. Ideally, we keep this set to forever. That way it allows us to have this loop forever. We also have these 0-second pull downs at the bottom of each frame. Now, the illusion of movement only really happens when frames play instantaneously. When you watch a movie, your eye doesn't really recognize that there are 24 frames happening every second. And so 0 seconds means that these are happening instantaneously. If you toggle this down on any of these frames, you will see that you can add some delay. It's set to no delay for each one. That's the 0 seconds. If we were to add, say, even 0.1 second, and you can hold shift and select all of these and change them all at once. Notice how this changes the motion. See how jerky that feels? That illusion of movement starts to get lost. I'm going to go ahead and hit stop and then Control Z back to my original. So having your frame set to no delay is really important, unless you're going for that kind of delayed animation look. Now, the horse is running backwards for many of us. If it's not running backwards, again, welcome to the enigma. For some students, it runs backwards. For some students, it doesn't. I don't know. But we can reverse our frames at any point in time by coming again to the hamburger icon at the top right of our timeline panel. And we can just select reverse frames. That just simply reverses our frames, and now our horse is running forward. Now, those of you that like to draw, you guys could technically add blank frames and draw on them. You could draw frame by frame animations through the timeline panel in Photoshop, and it actually does a really cool job. I've tried hand-drawn cell animation, and I just do not have the patience for it. I think I got like 5 frames in. I made like water come into a box, and it was something. But it's something you guys could try. If you love to draw and do animation, this is how you would. Now, this is just frame animation, and I'm not going to ever assign you guys a frame animation assignment. We will come back to this when we talk about animated GIFs, or GIFs if you say it wrong. So we're going to be using this in different capacities, but we're not going to have an assignment on frame by frame animation. But you will have some assignments on keyframe animation, and that takes me to our next tutorial. So once you guys are done playing with the horse, meet me in the next tutorial.